Cassius Wexford's ballroom had never held so much silence in one breath. The champagne glass shattered first, thin crystal against marble, a sound too delicate for what followed. Ginevra, Wexley's manicured hand, was still extended. Fingers curled around a fistful of pale blue silk, and the dress in her grip was no longer on the woman she'd torn it from. It hung between them now, ripped clean from shoulder to waist, exposing a slip the color of old ivory, and the woman, standing there mid-50s, silver threading through dark hair pinned simply at the nape of her neck, did not scream. She did not gasp. She simply stood there, hands loose at her sides, and looked at Ginevra with an expression that unsettled everyone close enough to see it. Not shame, not fear, something closer to recognition, as though she had been waiting 30 years for this exact moment to arrive. "I asked for the Cabernet, this cheap Merlot," Ginevra had said only moments before, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. God, do they hire anyone off the street now? Get me someone who actually knows how to serve. And when the woman in blue silk hadn't moved fast enough, hadn't apologized fast enough, hadn't shrunk fast enough, Ginevra had reached out and yanked the fabric of her dress the way one might yank a tablecloth, expecting silverware to scatter and the room to laugh with her. The room did not laugh, because the woman standing in the wreckage of her own dress was Delphine Ashgrove Sorrentine. And there were exactly 4 people in that ballroom who knew her name, and none of them had said a word. Nobody in the room understood why a woman dressed in simple pale silk, wearing no jewelry beyond a thin gold band, had been circulating near the kitchen doors all evening instead of mingling with the hedge fund managers and shipping heirs who filled the rest of the hall. Nobody understood why she'd waved off 2 different servers who'd tried to take her coat, insisting on hanging it herself. Nobody understood why, 40 minutes earlier, she had knelt beside a young busser who dropped a tray of oysters and helped him gather the broken shells with her bare hands, while he apologized in broken, panicked English, and why she had told him quietly, in a voice only he could hear, that his hands were shaking too hard to be his fault. Someone had understaffed the kitchen tonight, and that was not a mistake. He needed to carry. That busser's name was Emiliano Cruz Bautista, and he was the only person in the building who had learned 20 minutes before catastrophe struck that the calm woman helping him off the floor owned the hotel he worked in, not through Cassius Wexford's company, not through any name printed on the gala's program, through a holding company registered in Delaware 11 years earlier, one whose ownership records were locked behind enough legal architecture that even Cassius himself, hosting his engagement party in this very ballroom, had no idea who truly held the paper beneath his feet. Delphine had asked Emiliano not to say anything. He hadn't understood why a woman who owned buildings like this one would wear a department store dress and stand near the service entrance instead of the head table. He hadn't understood why she'd flinched almost imperceptibly when a passing guest called out for someone to bus this, without even glancing at his face. But he'd nodded, because there was something in the way she said it, quiet, steady, aching in a way he recognized from his own mother, that told him this request mattered more than politeness. It mattered like a promise. What none of them knew, not Ginevra, not Cassius, not the 200 guests in silk and tailored wool, was that 31 years earlier, in this same building, before it belonged to Cassius Wexford's family, and long before it belonged to Delphine, another woman had stood exactly where Delphine now stood, wearing a uniform instead of silk, and had been humiliated in front of a different crowd for the exact same reason. Her name had been Adeline Ashgrove. She had scrubbed these floors for 11 years. She had raised a daughter alone on the wages this hotel paid her, in a 2-room apartment, 4 bus transfers away, and she had died of a stroke in the hotel's own basement laundry room on a Tuesday morning in November, 61 years old, still wearing her uniform, because she could not afford to take the day off, despite the headaches she'd been having for weeks. Nobody from hotel management had come to the funeral. The general manager at the time had sent a card. Just a card. Delphine had been 26 then. working 2 jobs of her own, and she had promised her mother's grave that she would own this building one day, not for the marble, not for the chandeliers, but so that no one who wore a uniform inside it would ever again be treated as though they were furniture. It had taken her 17 years, a commerce degree earned at night, a logistics company built from a single delivery truck, a merger that made headlines under a name that wasn't hers, because she'd learned early that when powerful men saw a woman's name on a contract, they negotiated differently, usually worse. By the time she met Huxley Serentine at a shareholder dinner where she was the only woman not seated beside a spouse, she already controlled more real estate than most cities, entire downtown districts, and she had never once let her staff call her anything but Miss Ashgrove. Huxley had not known who she was either, not at first. He'd simply noticed the woman in the corner, declining champagne, asking the catering staff their names, remembering them an hour later when she said good night. He'd fallen for her before he understood what she owned, and by the time he did understand it, it no longer mattered, because what he loved about her was precisely the thing that had made her hide it. Delphine did not trust rooms like this one. She trusted the people who cleaned up after them. Tonight, she had come to this gala for one reason that had nothing to do with Cassius Wexford's engagement, and everything to do with the phone call she'd received 4 days earlier from her chief financial officer, informing her that Wexford Dynamics, the company Cassius ran, the company whose stock her holding fund had quietly accumulated for 8 months, had irregularities in its supplier payments that traced back through 3 shell accounts to a name that made her blood run cold: Ginevra Wexley's brother, an accountant who had been fired from Delphine's own logistics company 4 years earlier for falsifying invoices, and who had never faced charges because Delphine, at the time, had simply wanted the matter to disappear quietly rather than drag her company's name through a scandal that, mercy, it turned out, had metastasized. Wexford Dynamics employed 640 people in 3 states. If the embezzlement Delphine suspected was confirmed, funds bled slowly from supplier contracts into accounts that eventually funneled back to Ginevra herself. The company would collapse within the fiscal year, and 640 families would lose their income. 2 weeks before Christmas, Delphine had come tonight, not as a guest, but as an investigator, wearing silk instead of a badge, walking the kitchen and service corridors, because that was where the truth of any organization actually lived. Not in the boardroom, but in whether the people setting up chafing dishes at 11 p.m. were paid fairly, treated decently, trusted to speak. She had found her answer within the first hour. The kitchen was short-staffed by 4 people because Cassius's events director had cut the budget to cover cost overruns elsewhere. Cost overruns, Delphine now understood, were the missing funds. The workers were exhausted, underpaid, and terrified of complaining, and Ginevra Wexley, moving through the ballroom in a gown that cost more than most of the serving staff's annual salary, treated every one of them as though they were part of the furniture rental. When Ginevra tore Delphine's dress, she was not attacking a stranger. She was, without knowing it, attacking the one person in the building with both the evidence and the authority to end everything she and her brother had built on stolen money. Get her out of here, Ginevra said. Laugh now, glancing around for the validation of the crowd that usually came so easily. Honestly, the nerve, standing there like she belongs at this table. She does belong at this table. The voice came from the ballroom's entrance, and it did not need to be raised to silence the room a second time. Huxley Serentine had not been expected until the toast at 9. He stood now in the doorway in a charcoal suit, no tie, his expression unreadable in the way that had made grown executives sweat through negotiations for 2 decades, and beside him stood a woman none of the guests recognized, either sharp-eyed, holding a leather folio, introduced later as Odessa Marchetti, Delphine's chief counsel. Huxley crossed the ballroom without hurrying, the way a man walks when he already knows exactly how the next 10 minutes will unfold. And he did not go to comfort his wife first. He went to Emiliano, still standing frozen near the kitchen doors, and he shook the young man's hand and thanked him by name for something the room did not yet understand. Then he turned to Ginevra. "You just assaulted my wife," he said, "in front of 200 witnesses, and, as it happens, 4 working security cameras. Your fiancé installed himself last spring to catch a supplier he suspected of theft. I imagine he'll want to review that footage." "I certainly do." Cassius Wexford, who had been standing frozen since the champagne glass shattered, went the color of the tablecloths. "Huxley, out there's some misunderstanding." Ginevra didn't know, she thought. She thought your caterer's staff didn't deserve basic human respect. Huxley said, "which tells me everything I need to know about the culture inside your company, and confirms something my wife has suspected for 4 days." He looked at Delphine now, and something in his face softened even as his voice stayed level. "Tell them who you are, or I will." Delphine had spent 17 years building a fortress around that answer, and for one long moment, the ballroom waited to see whether she would finally open the gate. "My name is Delphine Ashgrove Sorrentine," she said, and her voice, though quiet, carried to every corner of the room, the way true things often do. "I hold 61% of the shares in Wexford Dynamics through Ashgrove Holdings, which I founded, and which now owns, among other properties, this hotel." A ripple moved through the crowd, chairs creaking as people turned. "I came here tonight to determine whether the rumors my accountants have been chasing for 4 days were true. That funds meant for suppliers and staff wages have been diverted through an account controlled by Ginevra Wexley's brother, Thaddeus Wexley, the same man my own company terminated for years ago for the identical crime." Ginevra's face had drained of color. Cassius took a step back from her, as though putting physical distance between himself and whatever was coming might somehow protect him. "I didn't need a boardroom to find my answer," Delphine continued. "I needed a kitchen. I needed to watch how the people with the least power in this building were treated by the people who assumed they had the most. And I watched Ginevra Wexley scream at an exhausted server, accuse a 19-year-old boy of incompetence for a staffing shortage her own family caused, and then rip the clothing off a woman she believed had no power to stop her." "Delphine, let that settle. She was right that I had no title on your program tonight, Mr. Wexford. She was wrong about everything else." The silence that followed was not the silence of shock alone. It was the specific, suffocating silence of powerful people realizing, all at once, exactly how much they had misjudged. Odessa Marchetti stepped forward and opened the leather folio, and within it were bank statements, wire transfer logs, and a termination letter from 4 years earlier bearing Thaddeus Wexley's forged signature on a non-disclosure agreement. Delphine had insisted on at the time an agreement that had kept his crime quiet, but had also, she now understood with the grief that had nothing to do with money, allowed him the freedom to do it again to people who could afford it even less. "I made a mistake 4 years ago," Delphine said, and for the first time, her composure cracked, slightly, not from fear, but from something closer to old sorrow. "I chose to protect my company's reputation instead of holding a thief accountable in the light. I told myself it was mercy. It was cowardice wearing mercy's clothes. And because of that choice, 640 families are now 4 days away from losing everything because their paychecks have been quietly bleeding into an account that funds gowns like the one Miss Wexley is wearing tonight." Ginevra opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came. Cassius had gone very still, staring at his fiancée as though seeing, for the first time, a stranger standing in her shoes. "I am not here to destroy your company, Mr. Wexford," Delphine said, turning to him now, and her voice gentled in a way that surprised even Huxley, who had rarely seen her extend grace this quickly to someone who'd nearly cost her nothing less than an entire workforce's livelihood. "I built my fortune so that I would never again have to watch someone like my mother clean floors for people who wouldn't remember her name. I'm here to save it, if you'll let me, but not with her anywhere near its finances, and not without every worker in that kitchen tonight receiving what they were owed." before a single dollar goes anywhere else. Cassius nodded, though he seemed barely able to speak. Security had already moved quietly toward Thaddeus Wexley, who'd been standing near the bar throughout, his face gray, clearly calculating how fast the exits were. Ginevra found her voice at last, thin and cracking. "I didn't know who she was. If I'd known." "That's the entire point," Delphine said, not unkindly, though the words landed with more weight than any shout could have carried. "You shouldn't have needed to know who I was. You should never have torn that dress at all." She reached up, then, and unpinned the small gold brooch she wore at her collar. A simple thing, easy to overlook, shaped like a laundry pin, worn every single day for the past 22 years. Few people had ever asked her about it. Emiliano, watching from the kitchen doorway with tears, he wasn't bothering to hide, had asked her about it 40 minutes earlier, and she had told him it belonged to her mother, who had once worked in a building very much like this one. "My mother scrubbed the floors of a hotel that stood on this exact ground before Mr. Wexford's grandfather built over it," Delphine said. And now, her voice did waver, just slightly, just enough for the whole room to feel the weight beneath 17 years of careful composure. "She died in its basement because she couldn't afford to take a sick day. Nobody from that hotel came to her funeral. I bought this land 9 years later so that no one who cleaned it, cooked in it, or served in it would ever again be treated as though their exhaustion, their dignity, their name didn't matter." She looked around the ballroom, at Emiliano, at the servers frozen along the walls, at the 200 guests who had, until 7 minutes ago, seen only silk and silverware. "Every person working tonight will receive triple wages for this shift, paid from my own account, effective tomorrow morning," she said. "And Wexford Dynamics will undergo a full independent audit, starting Monday, with every recovered dollar restored to the workers it was stolen from first. Before this company spends another cent on anything else. That is not a request, Mr. Wexford. That is the price of my 61%. Huxley stepped beside her and took her hand, not the hand that had held the shattered dress together, but the one that still bore, faintly, a small cut from helping Emiliano gather broken oyster shells an hour before. He did not need to say anything. He simply stood there, the way he had stood beside her for 6 years, in every boardroom and every quiet Tuesday, when the weight of her mother's memory settled over her like weather. 2 men in security uniforms escorted Thaddeus Wexley out through a side door as quietly as such a thing could be done, and Ginevra Wexley, no longer laughing, no longer certain of anything, sat down heavily in a gilded chair, with the torn silk of another woman's dress still clutched, forgotten, in her hand. It would be 4 months before Wexford Dynamics stabilized under new financial oversight. 4 months, during which every one of its 640 employees kept their jobs, their wages restored in full, several of them promoted into roles overseeing the very supplier contracts that had once been used to rob them. Emiliano Cruz Bautista would be offered, and would accept, a full culinary scholarship funded quietly through a foundation bearing his benefactor's mother's name. The Adeline Ashgrove Fund for Hospitality Workers, an organization that, within 2 years, would provide healthcare stipends, tuition assistance, and legal protection to nearly 4,000 workers across 17 states, none of whom would ever know the woman signing their scholarship checks had once knelt on a ballroom floor to help a frightened boy gather broken shells with her own hands. Cassius Wexford would marry no one that year. He would spend it instead rebuilding, quietly, humbled in a way that suited him better than the man he'd been at the start of the evening. Ginevra Wexley would disappear from every social register that had once opened for her. Her name, synonymous in certain circles with the sound of tearing silk, and Delphine Ashgrove Sorrentine would return 3 weeks later to the small, overgrown cemetery. 4 bus transfers from the hotel that now bore her mother's memory in every wage slip it issued, and she would kneel there in the cold, brushing leaves from a modest granite stone, and she would tell her mother, in a voice no one else could hear, that the building was hers now. Every hallway, every kitchen, every name on every uniform, and that no one wearing one would ever again be invisible. Inside it, the wind moved through the bare trees above her, and for the first time in 17 years, the promise she had made at 26 no longer felt like a debt she was still paying. It felt, finally, like a debt paid in full.
That is the power of quiet strength. It does not need to shout to be heard. If this story moves you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness always wins in the end. Hit subscribe because we have got many more heartfelt stories waiting for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.